So yeah, if you want to follow along, the slides are there. They're online. I've also tweeted it out, and I think ScotlandJS retweeted it, so you can find them there. So yeah, the content warnings, I have videos and loud noises where I shout at my curtains. Oh, my laptop, not my curtains, that would be. And any content warnings will appear there. So it'll be the slide before, you'll see them there. So I'm Luke Bonaccorsi. I'm a software engineer at Skybet and Gaming. We're an online gambling company that covers all of the UK. We're in Leeds. I tweet at LukeBUK, and I blog at lukeb.co.uk. And I'm a hardware noob. This isn't like some imposter syndrome thing. I literally have no idea what I'm doing. I live in fear of burning my house down when I'm doing any of this stuff. So that gives you an idea of what sort of level I am. So hopefully it means that you can find this stuff a bit more accessible. And I'm lazy. If there's a way I can not do something, I won't do it. And because I'm lazy, automation's fantastic because I can just automate away the boring things and then do just the interesting stuff. In everyday life, we're surrounded by automation, we probably don't realize it. So there's stuff like traffic lights, automatic doors, motion sensing lights, automatic hand dryers and cash machines. And that's just the stuff I noticed and paid attention to today, which shows how prevalent it is in our everyday lives. And as consumers, we're embracing automation more and more in our homes. So there's heating with the Nest thermostat, and lighting with Philips Hue, and even IKEA have brought out a really cheap set of bulbs that you can control through your phone and through systems like that. And then access control with smart door locks. Again, you can control it through your phone. You can hook up through an API and stuff like that. And these things all usually have an API, so you can interact with them, whether it's through the web or whether it's through Bluetooth or some of the technology. It means you can write scripts to run it from the command line and feel like a hacker because you're making your lights turn on and off from a command line. Or node services with really fancy dashboards, so you can pull all your different things together and have this beautiful dashboard you can work from on your phone or on your laptop or whatever, or a tablet stuck to the wall. So over the past few years, there's been what I've decided to call a bot uprising. Bot, not bot. They're quickly becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives, and they're helping us with everyday things. And it's really easy to build a simple, single-purpose bot. So you can have one that just connects to a single chat system like Slack. And they have a node module for that. And you can just npm install this module, pull it into your project, and build a really quick bot for a single thing. And then there are frameworks that you can use to build a more fully featured one, whether it connects to multiple chat systems or has different actions. So there's Microsoft Bot Framework. And there's another one called BotKit. And it makes it easy, but you can have a very fully fleshed out bot. And then virtual assistants are becoming more and more popular. So you've got like Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant. And they're basically bots, but are a lot smarter because they're backed by machine learning stuff. And they're in our homes with stuff like the Echo, the HomePod, and the Google Home. And they help out with things like reading news that you're interested in, and playing music and buying things. And the bot uprising is only just beginning. Bots and assistants are going to become far, far, far more common. So in mid-2014, I started working on my own chatbot. It's called Woodhouse. It's named after the butler on the TV show Archer. I was going to call it Jarvis after the Iron Man thing, but I realized that's really overdone because everyone will call it that, and it wasn't going to be anywhere near as good, so I picked a worse butler. It's open source and it's all written in JavaScript. It runs on nodes. It actually sits on a Raspberry Pi behind my TV. It's all MIT licensed because why not? And it's all hosted on GitHub because that's my platform of choice. And it's all free up there. The link is at the end if you want to grab it. It's modular and extensible. The core is basically just a router with some common functionality. So broadcasting, scheduling, and preference storage. And then there are two types of modules. So there's a plugins, which they can like reply with text, connect to APIs, interact with hardware. They do the heavy lifting. And then your interfaces, which are ways to communicate. So it's a chat system, or if you want to build one for the command line, or however you want to build it. And then there's a little bit of glue code between like the node module for connecting, so like Slack one, and then hooking it into Woodhouse. It's fairly straightforward. So in the beginning, I only wanted to download movies. I was sat in a meeting at my previous company with a colleague. We were waiting for it to start, so he was 10 minutes late, and he was on his iPad. He was VPN'd home to his Raspberry Pi and was queuing up movies to download. I thought it seemed like a lot of work. I knew of software that could download movies for me. I knew it had an API. I just wanted to be able to send a message, have it verified to me, and then it would go off and download. It would send me an IMDb link, I say yes, and that's it. It's done. But before I did that, I somehow managed to end up automating my lamps. So I send a message, they turn off. I take my time to send another message, eventually, and they turn back on. And when I first did this, I still occasionally do it now, I'll sit there and send the messages and just sit giggling to myself, because as web developers, we don't get this real world thing happening. We get a button changing color, or this moves across the page, or we load something from an API. We don't get lights turning on and off. And it's brilliant. It's a real world effect. So this is the thing that I bought to allow me to do it. It's a Wi-Fi plug that I bought from China for about £15. I have to use an adapter because it has the Chinese plug on the back, so it means it's really safe. And I found out by poking around it that you could telnet into it, so you couldn't do a lot by telnetting in. But then I found a Google group that had found the SSH passwords. And so it's not public on the plug isn't public on the internet, it's just internal, so it's a bit better. And it runs OpenWRT, which is a Linux distro for routers. So it means that I can drop scripts on it and have it do stuff when you hit a page. So I basically set a little API with that. You hit a page with a parameter and it turns the relay on. You hit it with a different parameter, it turns the relay off. You hit it with a third parameter and it gives you the status of the relay. And then there's another section where it can sort of configure some properties about it, so like a name, some tags, and bits like that. And then every 2 minutes, there's a script that broadcasts this information out so that Woodhouse can pick it up. So I don't have to do any configuration, I just plug them in and it works. So when I moved house, it was really easy because plug in the Raspberry Pi, plug in the plugs, done. And I use this every day, not whilst I'm here, obviously, because that would be pointless. But when I get home from work, if it's dark, I will pull out my phone, send a message, and the lamps are on when I get home. Or if I'm driving, I can shout at my phone and use Google Now and tell it to send a message. It means I get home, the lights are on, I'm not stumbling over anything that's been put through the door, I'm not trying to find the light switch, it's just in a usable condition, basically. And then I started adding all these other little bits. So I eventually added the TV and film downloaders, but I never used them. I just did it for completionism. Because Netflix and streaming became a really popular and easy way of doing that stuff. So I just paid them instead. But then I did stuff like checking if websites are up and reminders so that I can put a pizza in the oven and send a message to give me a reminder so that I don't have a burnt pizza, because burnt pizza is terrible. And I started having all these wild ideas of getting it to control everything I could. But instead I rewrote it because I'm a developer and we do that sort of thing. The old code was a mess. It was getting really difficult to work with. Because I'd just been throwing code at it as I was figuring things out, I was really excited. But I got to use ES6 and all the nice stuff that came with it, and using newer versions of Node, and it all just worked because all I did was upgrade Node and then start writing ES6. So the first time I gave this talk, or a version of this talk, was November 2016, and I wanted to do something new for that talk. So I automated my curtains. So yeah, I send a message and they start opening. Send another message and they close. And it's really loud. You can probably hear that. And it's a bit creepy looking. I don't know what it looks like from the outsides. Like haunted house-esque. But yeah, I even had to buy a ladder for that, if you can see it in the corner. I bought the ladder for the single purpose of automating my curtains. So this is the parts, and it's relatively bare. There's a box that I bought from a supermarket. There's some pipe clips that I bought from B&Q, some plastic wheels I bought off eBay, some string and a servo. And basically, the string sits in a loop at the top of the curtains. The curtains are attached to one side or the other, and as the string rotates, it either pulls them open or closes them. It's kind of rubbish, but it sort of works. And then this is the brains behind the operation, I guess. It's an ESP8266. It's a microcontroller like an Arduino, but it's got Wi-Fi. It costs a couple of pounds from China, so last time I got a batch of them, I bought 20 because they take about a month to arrive and I get really bored during that time. But there's a firmware you can flash on it called Mongoose that means you can write JavaScript. So I wrote 75 lines of JavaScript and I automated my curtains. And that had endpoints for opening, close, and giving me the status, the ability to configure it, and broadcasting so that Woodhouse could pick it up. And there's so much cool stuff for doing hardware and JavaScript together. So I mentioned Mongoose, but then there's Johnny 5 and ScotlandJS, where you can run it on an Arduino. It's got to be tethered to like your laptop or something, but you can control it like that. Or if you put it on a Raspberry Pi, it means you've got JavaScript on a Raspberry Pi. Or development boards that have JavaScript built in, so like the Esperinos and the Tessels. And they're a bit more expensive, but it's a first-class experience. They've planned for that. And then there's loads more on the web. Every time I check, there's something new. And this stuff makes it really easy to dive in and get going. And then I got bored over Christmas 2016 and started shouting on my laptop. And it wasn't out of frustration because I was getting bugs and terrible things. It was for voice control.
Woodhouse. Turn off lamps.
Chair lamp has been turned off. TV lamp has been turned off. Couch lamp has been turned off.
So it's got the worst reply voice ever.
Turn on lamps.
Chair lamp has been turned on. TV lamp has been turned on. Couch lamp has been turned on.
So yeah, it's got the worst reply voice ever. That's the default in Festival, which is text-to-speech on Linux. I am running Linux in that. But I'm guessing if you ran it on like a Mac or Windows, they actually care about that stuff. So it might sound a bit nicer. And yeah, so this has got offline hotware detection, so it's not listening to me all the time and sending my data to a third party. It uses a module called Snowboy. You go to their website, you train a model 3 times by saying a word, and then download it, drop into your project, you've got offline hotware detection. And then for the majority of the actual conversion, I use the Google Speech API, mainly because they have a lot more data than I'll ever have, but also because you get 60 minutes free a month. But you could use Azure or Amazon instead, or any of the multitude of services that are out there now. And all this does is it takes the action, converts it to text, sends it to the main hub, and then the main hub carries out the action. And eventually I'll have Raspberry Pis scattered around my house with microphones and speakers so that I can just have this everywhere. So you've probably heard of Nest. I mentioned it earlier. You've maybe heard of Hive if you're from the UK. I want to introduce a brand new entry into the smart heating arena. It's called Set. It's a revolutionary JavaScript-based Wi-Fi enabled thermostat. It's got incredible timeless design. And it's crafted from the finest plastic that I got free through my 3D printer. It has the ability to boost and pause so that you can, if you're working from home, you can tell it turn the heating on during the day. If you're coming home late, you can say don't turn the heating on until this time. It's got a minimum temperature so that the pipes don't freeze, because frozen pipes are really expensive. And it's got an API so you can change all the settings and interact with it and stuff. So it's integrated with Woodhouse as well. That probably doesn't make a lot of sense to anyone besides me. I'm not a UX designer. And yeah, so I live in a rented house. And this is the thermostat that my previous house came with. And it wasn't really accurate. So you'd set it to 18, the temperature would go off at 16, and it would never really rise above 16. So it wasn't really accurate. I'd have to keep fiddling around with it. And I took that plastic wheel off and found that there was a potentiometer behind it, basically a variable resistor, and it's got a little notch on it. So what I did was I 3D printed a wheel that would sit on that notch. The wheel attaches to a servo, and then I 3D printed a case to hold the parts. So what it basically does is it just turns it from minimum to maximum when it decides what it should do. And then it just sits on my existing thermostat. It's got a schedule on it. It's got a temperature sensor in there. It checks every couple of seconds to make a decision on whether it should turn it on or off or whatever. And then it just turns from 5 degrees, I think is the minimum, to 30. And then when it decides that it's hit its actual limit, it turns it back. So there aren't many parts. There's an ESP8266, same as earlier, runs Mongoose OS again. There's a temperature sensor. There's a resistor, because the internet told me I needed one. And then the servo that turns the dial. And this ran my heating over winter. And it made it really easy to control and see what the temperature was. And I plan on making it smarter so it's predictive, so it can have the schedule, and then it decides, okay, the temperature is this at this point, it's going to take this long to actually heat up, and it can work it out. So that's the story so far, but it's only just the beginning. I've just moved house, as mentioned, so I have to set everything up again. And my new house doesn't have curtains, it's got blinds. So I'm going to automate the blinds. And the thermostat's different, so it's not one of those dial ones, it's an RF one. So I'm going to have to do some RF hacking, which is going to be fun. And then I want extra module type of data providers, so I can have light sensors and temperature sensors, and have a recipe system like IFTTT as well, so that when my phone connects to the network and it's dark outside, it can turn on the lamps and close my blinds. And then I want to do natural language processing so that I'm not barking specific commands like Woodhouse turn on lounge lamps, because it doesn't feel natural. I want to be able to actually make it sound conversational and not force myself to say certain things. And then have a unit in my car for controlling the music and contacting the main hub, and definitely not controlling the car itself. And then I want to do more hardware. I've really enjoyed doing this stuff. I mean, I have some terrible, terrible ideas. So I want to have a door lock that I've made, which not good plan. And then light switches, again, not good plan. Mains electricity bad. And I'm genuinely terrified of the prospect of home ownership, not because of having a mortgage and being a grown-up, but because I'll burn it down. And that's my money. So at the start of this talk, I said I was lazy, and obviously it's wrong. I want to correct it. I'm the ridiculous kind of lazy, where I'll spend hundreds and hundreds of hours making things so I don't have to do simple little tasks. I'm basically the personification of this XKCD. But it goes further than that. I am not here to show off all the cool stuff I've built. I'm here with the aim of inspiring you. I want to show you that you can do some really, really cool stuff with JavaScript. So whilst I've been doing this, I've learned so much. I've learned about JavaScript itself, I've learned ES6, I've learned bits about hardware. And I kept going down the rabbit hole. I keep finding new stuff. I'd keep learning. I have that enthusiasm that Ramon was on about yesterday. Having that curiosity, I found the thing that gives me that curiosity. I'd keep going because it was interesting. I bought a 3D printer because of this. And it's fantastic because I used it to print the case for my thermostat. I use it to print all sorts of things now. Anything that I want to make, I will print a case for it. And it makes future stuff easier now. So I realized a great parallel whilst I was working on this talk. My other big passion is food and cooking. And if you were learning to cook, you'd learn by cooking stuff you wanted to eat. There's no point if you don't enjoy the food you're cooking. So in the same vein, when you're learning, build something that's weird and interesting to you. It'll keep you invested. You can hack it, you can cut corners. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're building it for yourself. You don't even have to share it. But if you do, people will probably be interested. I didn't think people would be interested in this, but people have been. So thank you very much.